just evolved to where we are now.
And tell people, in the body of that law, how much it is if you get one of these calls, how much you could potentially get here.
$500 per violation or per call. And if you can demonstrate that they made the call willfully, then it's treble or 3 times that amount, $1,500 per call.
I've asked you this once before, and I'm going to try again. Can you give me just a ballpark amount that you have made over the years from robocalls?
I can tell you that once this project took off, I kind of got blacklisted. I don't get a lot of robocalls anymore. These people all know who I am and they know my number and they just don't call me anymore. But I very aggressively pursued them between about July of 2018 to January of this year. And during that time, I made probably $65,000 in settlements. Not a bad side hustle.
I would say so. All right, I know a lot of you are going to have questions as we go through this whole process. That is why I have the laptop here. I'm going to refresh this and we will start with some of the questions as soon as they start coming in. Okay, the other reason that Doc is here is that because of his knowledge and the fact that he obviously knows how to do it and do it well, he has come up with a kit. You can go online and look all of this up. What Doc has done has created a kit with a step-by-step instruction on how to do it. And it includes everything from what to what? Tell us.
Well, essentially there's 3 steps. The first step is you got to take the call and answer it, talk to the callers, which, people don't want to do that. They say, oh, well, it's a pain. Well, how much time?
Because you want to just hang up or you want to block them or you want to do.
And we'll talk about those in a minute too, all of those, potential solutions. But you talk to the caller. You get the information that you need, which the kit tells you what information you need to get, and it varies from different types of callers. Auto warranty companies, you're going to get one set of information. Health insurance, you're going to get a different set of information, and so on. It just kind of depends. That's the first step. Then you take the information that you collect from the callers and research them, find out who it is that's actually behind the calls. And that's really the tricky part. And that's where I suppose the magic, if you want to call it that, in the kit really is I've spent years figuring out how to track these guys. And now we have thousands and thousands of people using the kit. We have a private members only group where people share information, tips, tools, techniques. So we're years beyond what I was just a year ago even, because you've got all these creative minds going after these people. And once you've identified them, then you use one of the template demand letters that are included in the kit, send it off to the company, and shortly thereafter the negotiations typically begin.
Diane has a question. This is a good one, Diane. How do you know it's a robocaller if it doesn't say robocaller?
There's a couple of key indicators. The first thing is, obviously, if there's a pause, when you answer, you say hello, and there's a pause, and then maybe a click or a beep, and then they go, hello? Well, have you ever called anybody and when they pick up, go hello? That's because the way these work, there is a computer that is randomly picking numbers, dialing those numbers. When someone answers the phone, then that call is then routed to someone in a call center with a headset on, or they may be even in their house. Right. Believe it or not, that actually happens. Yeah. That's pretty common. And they hear a tone in their headset that lets them know that the call is coming through. That's what that click or that beep is, and they begin their pitch.
Okay, all right, it makes sense. Hang on, let me see, because I think another question just came in. I'm a little bit slow here. Tonight at 10 o'clock, we actually have a story running, and Doc, you'll see his face again because he is in our story at 10 o'clock.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. You're good. You're good on TV as well, just like you're good on camera here. But I will say that 2 of the women that we feature in this story, they're not saleswomen. They're not women that that are great on the telephone, but they have managed to, between the 2 of them, make nearly $12,000
so far.
So far, and that's the key, right? So far is that it just keeps going.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are pausing and saying, well, it's not stopping the robocalls, because you're still getting a bunch of robocalls. But the idea here is, well, if you can't stop them right away, at least you can get money for them.
For the record, my phone is sitting here on the table, and we'll see how many I get during this, during this segment. I don't get robocalls very much anymore. You know, like I said, once you hit them in the pocketbook, and I referenced some of those possible solutions earlier. People say, oh, I just blocked the number. Well, that used to work because they would just program a number into what you see on your caller ID, and they would call and you would block the number, and that was it. Well, they figured out that people were doing that, and they now change the number that they show as being called from every day. So blocking the numbers really doesn't do anything except down the road, especially if the number is, you know, here in Houston, you've got what, 832-713. Well, if someone gets that number, you know, one of your friends gets a new phone number and it happens to be one of the numbers on your blocked list, well, you're never going to hear from them. So, you know, you kind of lose your friend that way. That's one thing. The other thing is people say, oh, you know, I just keep them on the phone and troll them and, you know, mess with them and whatever. And it's like, hey, if you're going to do that, why not make some money in the meantime doing it? I mean, it might as well.
Just on average with all of the people that you've had contact with that have used this kit, about how long does it take in a conversation that you actually do have with somebody trying to figure out that information, the name of the company, the website address, all of those things that you have to be able to get to be able to figure out exactly who they are? About how long does that take?
It varies from person to person. There's a certain element of skill associated with it. You have to kind of practice it. The more you do, the better you'll get. We just had someone today in our private members only group who from start to finish, from the day she got the call to the day she has the check in her hand, it was 7 days. And it was I showed it to you, a $2,000 or $3,000 check. The fastest that I've ever seen was one that I did, that it was 27 hours from the time I got the call to the time I actually had the check hand delivered to my house by the owner of the company that had contacted me.
And did you sent it snail mail, right?
No, I called him.
Oh, you called? Oh.
Now it's different for me than it is for a lot of people. Obviously, you know, my name's kind of out there a little bit, and so when people realize who I am or whatever, they know that I know enough about this to actually go after them and cause them real trouble. But for the average person, you know, it can be anywhere from, you know, a few days up to, you know, maybe a month. Now, you know, the month is definitely on the long side. I'd say probably an average would be maybe a week or two, generally speaking.
I know in some instances you end up in a phone conversation with a lawyer for one of these companies.
Very often.
And so how do you play that? I mean, I feel like you've kind of got the upper hand because you have the law on your side, but again, though, it's a little nerve-wracking to deal with a lawyer.
It is, and you know, I've spent a lot of time working with and for attorneys on both sides, and I can tell you that really what it comes down to is don't get emotional about it. Don't get excited or nervous or worried. All you got to do is say, these are the facts. Bottom line, here's the law. Right. You violated the law. The penalty for violating the law is this, and I'm willing to settle for this. And if you do that, more often than not, and this is an important element of how this process works, these companies go to great lengths to hide themselves. That's why you can't ever find them. That's why you can't find them online. That's why Googling the numbers don't work, and so on. You have to get this important information so that you can research them. Well, the reason they go to such great lengths to hide themselves is because they know that what they're doing is totally illegal. And you know, we talked about the $1,500 per call. Well, that's what you as a consumer can get. The FCC can actually levy fines against these companies. And for example, them spoofing the number, using that fake number, by itself carries a $10,000 fine from the FCC per call. So if you figure there's companies out here that are running, you know, hundreds of thousands of numbers in a month, millions perhaps, multiply that times $10,000 each, and if their information becomes a matter of public record, well, the FCC loves that. Hey, we've already got all of our homework done for us. Right here, you know, with a bow on it, because I filed a lawsuit against this company. They don't want that. They can't afford that. So they're willing to settle to avoid having their information put out there in the public domain.
So that's really the gist of it. Like, this is like a go away, leave us alone so we can keep doing what we're doing. And then can you talk about the non-disclosure, because that comes up
at a time when non-disclosures are kind of a big deal. Typically when you do come to a settlement agreement or arrangement with these companies, they're going to want you to sign some form of settlement agreement that usually includes a non-disclosure, which basically says that you can't out them first and foremost. You can't talk about who they are. You can't badmouth them. You can't go on social media and go, I just busted XYZ company for $5,000 on a robocalls thing. Once you sign that agreement, you can't do that. You can't talk about them. It also means that you can't then go and sue them for the calls or the text messages or faxes, which we should mention. All of those are included in this law. Anything that's included in that settlement is covered. Now, if they call you again, and believe it or not, that happens a lot.
I was about to ask that. It does, doesn't it?
It does happen a lot, and people get busted twice. I've actually busted the same group in Florida. I can't say who it is. It's a health insurance industry, and I busted the same group 3 separate times for $15,500, I think.
Boy, that sounds sweet, doesn't it? All right, so Kathy wants to know who writes the check? Who are you getting the check from?
The robocallers. All these people that have gone to such great lengths to hide their identities and stay under the radar. Once they're exposed, and they ultimately cut you a check, and that check has their name. And it's funny because I get a lot of questions. We post copies of redacted, obviously, checks so nobody violates their non-disclosure. But we'll see a check that's handwritten, and people are like, "What business writes handwritten checks on a personal size check?" And I'm like, scumbag robocallers, mostly. And and I say scumbag robocallers, let me be clear, there are legitimate businesses who do this, who do follow the rules, who do check their numbers against the do not call registry, which we should probably talk about too.
Yes.
The do not call registry was established by federal law, the telemarketing sales rule, and it was to help enforce the TCPA. It created one place where consumers could go, put their number in, and say, I don't want to receive unsolicited telemarketing messages.
Raise your hand if that's working for you. Yeah.
Well, what it does is triples the amount you can collect from them. So it's working brilliantly for me and thousands of other people.
If someone's like, wait, what did you just say? So if you're not on the do not call registry, right? You actually, if you go on to, we have put the link to our story in the body of this video, you can click on there, and you can also get to Doc's kit, but you can also click on the do not call registry and see if your number is listed, and if it's not, you can actually get it on there. And then is it a 30-day turnaround?
Once you enter your number in, if it's not in there, there's a way to verify it. As you said, you put in your email and your phone number, and they'll send you a verification back if you are on the do not call or if you're not. I encourage people to get on there. There's a lot of myths and misconceptions about, I put my name on the do not call and I started getting more. I can assure you that is not the case. It's just random. It's unfortunate, but that's not the case. That list is not shared. It's not, nobody gets it except the federal government. And, it is a good thing to do. It will reduce the number of calls you get from legitimate robocallers. Unfortunately, that isn't the preponderance of people making these kinds of calls, but it will reduce to a certain extent the number of calls that you get. More importantly, as I said, it increases the amount that you can collect from the illegal robocallers when they call you.
Which starts at 500 and goes up to 1,500. But then it really is kind of a negotiation, isn't it?
Yeah, that comes down to confidence. At this stage in the game, if somebody wants to settle with me, it's like, okay, the settlement is $1,500. And they say, well, that's not really a settlement, that's a full amount. I was like, okay, well, the alternative is you go to court. And the kind of stuff that I'm gonna hit you with in court is gonna cost you $25,000 to defend and lose. Do you really wanna spend that? And more often than not, these companies don't.
Let me go back through here, because I'm not seeing a lot of the questions.
It's see scrolling.
I know, I'm going into it now. Let me, so someone's asking again, can you list the statutes or the laws that we're talking about here?
Telephone Consumer Protection Act is, TCPA is the main one. That's probably the one that people are most familiar with.
Yeah, and that's one that you can jump online now, well, after this video, and go in there and read it yourself. It's actually really easy to read. It's not one that's
it's not a lengthy statute.
Yeah. And so I am going through here. While we're waiting and for me to get caught up here on, why can I not see this? People say they can't hear us. They can hear us. Okay, so you can hear us.
Turn the volume up on your computer.
Yeah, well, there's that. Okay, so do me a favor though. Let's go back in time here, because how did you get started with this, right? How did you start out with this kit?
My background is I'm a consumer credit expert.
Yeah.
I was in the credit repair industry for a long time, and I was one of the good guys, not the boogeyman that you only hear about on the news. I was one of the legit companies. And I started leaning more toward the consumer advocacy piece because I was seeing debt collectors abuse consumers and just never be held accountable. And there's multiple consumer law statutes that were of incredible value to us. And one of the big things that they were doing is they were calling people incessantly. They'd call 10, 15 times a day.
And people on here are saying that. They're saying, like, you just can't get a break.
Yeah, and the debt collectors, by the way, that's an important point. The debt collectors are subject to these rules. Ultimately, anybody that calls you with an auto dialer, they have to have your express, prior, written consent to call, text, or fax you at a number that you've given them. And if they don't have that, then it's a violation. If you have at some point given it, if you clicked a box somewhere on a website or something like that, you can still revoke that consent at any time. And then after that, they're barred from calling you, texting you, faxing you.
Holly Johnson's got a good question. How do you know legal versus illegal robocalls?
Well, the biggest thing, as I said, is the pause. Is there a pause when you answer the phone? Is there a click? Is there a beep? Is it an automated recorded message? I mean, that's a dead giveaway. A lot of times now, technology being what it is, we hear a lot about AI technology, artificial intelligence. A lot of these are just intuitive listening programs that they'll ask yes/no questions and say, are you interested in? Yes. Then it goes to the next prompt and so on. And at the end, they'll ask you, would you like some more information about this medical device or this health insurance product or whatever. A lot of times they do that thinking that it gives them consent, but in reality it doesn't.
I'm not sure if that's what she's asking or if she's asking what types of calls are legal versus illegal.
It really doesn't matter. Now, there are some exceptions. You're not going to be able to do anything about political text messages. I know we're coming into an election year. Obviously, we've all dealt with that. Those are exempt. And now before everybody says, of course, politicians exempted themselves, keep in mind that this law was written and passed long before text messaging was really even a thing. So it's not like it was done intentionally, I don't think. But they are exempt. 501c3 charities are exempt. Your school, if they're trying to give you information about your kids, whether it's a rain issue or a flood issue.
Yeah.
Here in Houston.
We all know about that.
Snow days, things like that.
We don't know about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Snow's not so much of an issue down here.
No.
So there are a few exceptions, but generally speaking, the things like auto warranty calls, health insurance calls, roofers. You here in Texas, obviously with the inclement weather, we get hail damage. That's a big one. Anybody that wants to come and inspect your roof for free, we're going to have inspectors in here. Those are marketing companies that have been hired by roofers to set up appointments so that they can come out and hard press you and sell you to get a new roof for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. All of those are our key targets. Air duct cleaning. I actually did a live video in our private group where an air duct cleaning guy called, set up an appointment, showed up at my house. I got his card and all of his stuff on a live video. And, I told the guy, I was like, look, I'm not interested in busting you. I want the marketing company that you hired. So right there on live video, I got the information from the guy. And that's now a case that's pending.
Wow. That's,
And there are robocallers watching this right now. I guarantee you. They watch very closely. And I will only say this. If you are doing business legitimately, you have absolutely nothing to fear. If, however, you're not, we're coming for you.
Well, so that's the thing, right? You've sold thousands of kits, right? So we know at least thousands of people are trying to do this, and then some people who have figured it out on their own are doing it as well.
Sure.
Have there been instances where the person on the other end knows what's going on and they realize what's going on?
All the time. And that's, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I used to get questions before this thing really went viral and really got a lot of the attention that it's now getting. People would say, well, eventually if you get, that good at this, aren't they just going to stop calling? Yes, you're welcome.
That's the end game, right? I mean, that's
congratulations.
Right.
We win.
Right.
And if they don't, Well, in the meantime, we're helping people make mortgage payments and put their kids through college and, save their home out of foreclosure. Because a lot of times people here in Texas, when someone's being foreclosed upon, that becomes a public record at some point. And investors who want to buy your house for pennies on the dollar will come to you and tell you that they'll take you out of foreclosure and so on. Well, a lot of these companies automate those messages and calls. And we've had people who have literally had their house go into foreclosure and they get a $3,000 or $4,000 settlement, which allows them to then catch their mortgage up and takes them out of foreclosure.
What is the most you know of that someone has received from a robocall?
I know of at least one person who has $300,000 ready, already, and has got another $150,000 pending.
Wait, now is that from multiple calls or is that from one?
That's from a number of calls.
I see. And is this the person who's not too far from here?
Yes.
Okay.
Here in Texas.
So here in Texas, this person's here in Texas. Do you know what type of calls he got?
The same. It's the
all
same
kind of the
list.
same,
They are all generally the same kinds of calls. The health insurance, the auto warranty, the roofers, the air duct cleaning, the medical devices, things like that.
So Betty wants to know, so how do you make money when they won't stop?
How do you make money if they won't stop?
No, how do you make money when they won't stop?
Well, the key is, if you've got them dead to rights, they've called you, you know that they're the ones that called, and you're able to adequately identify and prove that it was them. You send them a demand letter. There are those companies that simply won't respond, and they'll just call your bluff. Okay, sue me. Well, you have the option to just blow it off. Odds are they're not going to call you anymore. That's a win. I mean, you spent a few bucks to send them a letter, and that's that.
Okay.
The other option is, of course, you can actually file a lawsuit if you want, or you can do it yourself in small claims. Here in Texas, we have a $10,000 max until September of next year, when it doubles and goes to $20,000,
right,
which is going to be brilliant for these people. Or you can hire an attorney and take it all the way up to federal court.
Do most people, though, just stick with that quiet little check, sign that non-disclosure, and then move on and wait? I'm not going to say wait for the next one, but some people are at that point where it's paying so well that they're like, come on, robocallers, keep it coming. Absolutely.
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, there's one of the ladies in the piece who...
She's taken her family to Disney World.
Yes, she is.
She made a point of saying that to us because, again, she's at $10,000 and she's got some other things in the works right now, and there's really no
She's got some lawsuits pending, too.
She has become kind of an expert in her own right. So Michelle Flores wants to know, this is another good one, do you have to handle the settlement in person? Because that sounds scary.
No.
Yeah, so you don't have to come face to face with anybody.
No, the vast majority of that is done email or regular mail. The kit talks about the differences between doing email versus regular mail. They both have their advantages. They both have their drawbacks. So it's just kind of pick and choose. Some people, there was a discussion in our private members only group on Facebook today where someone was saying, should I send letters or should I do email? Well, there's equal numbers of people on both sides of that argument that say, oh no, you absolutely have to do this. And it really comes down to personal experience, and it comes down to the companies that you're dealing with.
I will say this, if you choose the route, if you're on board and you're interested in taking part in this cash for robocalls, and you end up going with Doc's kit, the way that works is, and I got a little confused in the beginning by that, after you make the purchase, you are sent it, it's an automatic download that you get, right? So you get it immediately, and then I guess this happens for everybody, just after that purchase, then you invite them to become part of this private Facebook group.
They actually get an email shortly after. There's a confirmation page that comes up as soon as they make the purchase with a download link in it. They click that link, they download the kit. Also, they get an email sent to them that has the download link as well. Now, it's important to mention for those watching that the download link expires. The link expires 72 hours after you receive it.
So you got to save it.
Exactly. Well, no, you don't save it. You just download the kit. And then once you download the kit, you have the kit, and that's it.
Yeah.
If you don't see it, then I tell people check your spam, check your junk mail, because it might be in there. But generally speaking, I don't have a lot of trouble with it.
And then when you get into the private group, what you'll find is a lot of people, they'll post their check, right? The redacted stuff, everything scratched out, but you'll see the check amount that they're getting.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of motivates other people, right? And so everyone's kind of sort of helping each other out,
Yeah.
and they're helping with information. And so it's kind of like a sort of a group, like a support group that kind of helps you in this sort of money-making process that's
Well,
going
and
on.
it's kind of, I refer to it as kind of an open source group
Yeah.
where people are going in there and they're exchanging tips, tools, techniques, research tools that they stumble across,
Yeah.
or a company that nobody's been able to find. Somebody will go, hey, has anybody found this company?
Mm-hmm.
And somebody finds it, and there you go. And what's happening is, the more of these kits that we sell, the more people that we have in the group, the more information that's being dumped into that group, and the more effective all of us are becoming.
I want you to answer this one. I believe I know the answer to this one, but I'm in California. Julene says, I'm in California. Do the same laws apply?
Absolutely. It's
Yeah,
federal law,
it's
so it
federal.
applies in all 50 states.
Yeah.
We have as a matter of fact, we have the farthest one away that I know of is Alaska. We have a woman that's made quite a bit of money in Alaska. Her name is Brenda.
Hi, Brenda. You think she's maybe watching?
I would be willing to bet.
Hi, Brenda. Good luck. All right, so when these phone numbers are concealed, do I just play their game and make myself seem interested to try and find out the company that is calling me? Do I bust them over the phone right then, or do I need to go through a process and try to settle for compensation from these callers? Jamie, thank you for that question.
The short answer is yes.
You gotta play dumb.
You gotta
Let's just break it down here. You
Yeah.
just sort of have to play dumb, or really, really interested.
Be a little bit of an actor or actress, but you don't have to bust them right then and there. The key is, what we're looking for in the call is getting the information. The odds of you getting the call and busting somebody right away is almost zero. I can't even do that, and I've been doing this for years. A lot of times if you start acting like you're going to bust them, they just
They'll hang up.
calls over.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
now whatever information you've gotten, you've got. But we do tell people to keep the information, save the information on all the calls. There's a call log that we include in the kit that people can print out and just keep by the phone, or keep handy. And it has a series of questions that you can ask at varying points in the conversation to kind of get the information out of them. Now, you're going to put different spins on those pieces of information, simply because, again, it's different industries, and there's different resources and tools to locate these people behind the calls. So, it does kind of vary. And it sounds simple. It is simple, but I don't want to sound pitchy. I really don't want to be a sales guy. But there are critical steps that, if you don't know them, you will not have the same level of success. Keep in mind, this has been a 6-year project for me. So,
But the bottom line is, when you're on the phone, and even think about, I actually did it, right? So I got a call from it was someone trying to sell me a vacation in Mexico. And I was like, oh, Mexico, okay. So I listened to their pitch, and I listened to what they were saying. And then I started asking what I would ask if I was really interested, which is, where is your company? What is the name of your company? How can I get in touch with your company? Do you have a website? I'm looking for more information. And so you just kind of ask the questions that you would automatically ask if you were truly interested. So that's why the acting comes in, I guess, because pretend I wouldn't mind going to Mexico, but I wasn't in the market for it at the time. And so I played along, and then said, well, I gotta talk to my husband, and I'm not married, but I gotta talk to my husband, and I have to, we went through that whole spiel, and they bought it, and they gave me everything I needed. They sent me an email. I got their website address. We figured out where their home office was. We figured everything out.
Yep.
And so that process in and of itself I'm sure some calls will be much more complicated than others.
Yeah.
And some will be much tougher than others.
Yeah.
But this one was a Mexican vacation, and it actually wasn't that difficult.
And just so everybody knows, I'm not multitasking. I'm actually looking at the
you are.
comments. I'm looking at the comments here, so I want to make sure that we get everybody's
I
questions
know,
answered.
and so I'm trying to go through too. So Holly has one. She says, do you need to record the initial call? She's asking about recording.
Here's the deal with recording calls. That's a tricky thing, because there's wiretapping laws that vary from state to state, and you can actually wind up in trouble for recording calls without, if you're not following the rules. For example, Texas is a one-party state, which means that one party on the call has to know that the call is being recorded, and that's it. But if someone from a two-party state, meaning both parties on the call, or at least two people on the call, have to know that it's being recorded. If the call originates in that state and comes to you, well, then what are the rules on that? We don't give legal advice, and I need to offer those disclosures. Nothing about the kit is to be considered legal advice or opinion. I'm not a lawyer. I just happen to know a lot about this particular subject.
And you kind of sound like one on TV. No kidding.
And I sound like the robocallers and their attorneys always say, "Are you an attorney?"
Oh, sure.
No, I just teach attorneys, guys like you, how this really works.
Right.
So I saw a good question in here. Oh shucks, where'd it go?
Someone has shared this to some of their friends. Thank you. Does this work through unwanted text messages?
Yes, it does.
Text
Absolutely.
messages, yes.
And text messages are great. We see checks for text messages every single week. People are posting them in the members group all day, every day. Police or firefighter donations, that's a great question.
Yeah.
A lot of these companies pose as 501c3s. They're not. 90% of them are not actual 501c3s. So they are actionable. You can go after them. The trick is figuring out which is which. Again, when you go through the kit and you kind of learn how to decipher this information and how to pull it out of people, then it gets a lot easier. So,
Credit card calls. Mike Dunn's like credit card calls because apparently he gets a lot of those.
Mike, I've got bad news for you. The only robocalls I get anymore are in Chinese, in Spanish, and people want to lower my credit card interest rates. Now that one obviously is a little close to home for me because, with my background in consumer credit, the deal with the credit cards is no credit card company is going to call you and go, "Hey, we just like to give away money, so we're going to lower your interest rate." They don't do that. We all know that you can occasionally call your credit card company and ask for a reduction, and sometimes they'll grant that to you, but they're never going to call you and reward you. The scam on that is basically very simple. They call and they say, "Hey, based on your great payment history, we're going to lower your credit card interest rate. Does that sound good?" Yes. What card has the highest balance? You tell them. They say, "Okay, well, just for verification purposes, what's the expiration on that card?" And you say, "It's 9/2023. Okay, awesome. Then they ask you a couple of inane questions, and then they go, "Okay, and I think I've got it pulled up here on the screen. Could you go ahead and confirm that 16-digit card number?" Well, you've already given them the expiration. Now you're giving them the 16-digit card number, and before you know it, someone in India or Pakistan or somewhere, and that's where most of these actually are coming from, is just buying stuff or selling your credit card number.
Okay, so that brings up another thing that someone asked me on, I think someone posted it on Twitter today. They're like, "Well, this doesn't work when someone calls you from overseas, right?"
Well, here's the deal. The law applies to the caller or the person who hired the caller. And that's a great question because there's a lot of discussion and debate about that. There's contradictory case law depending on who you ask and what jurisdiction you're in. They're auto warranty companies. There was a big case where a consumer sued an auto warranty company. They actually won and collected some, we're supposed to collect some enormous amount.
Yeah.
The auto warranty company then went and appealed it, and they won on appeal because, hey, we hired a marketing company in good faith. They assured us they were doing everything above board, and as such, well, we can't be held responsible. Well, that particular case, they won. So that is the defense that a lot of these auto warranty people try to use now. Well, the problem is there's a lot of other cases that don't support that ideology, and people don't understand a lot of times. Just because one court said it doesn't mean that all the courts say it. The more case law we get, the more it tends to be in favor of consumers, and that's really what we want, in these situations. Now, if the marketing company calls on behalf of the auto warranty company or the health insurance company, technically you can go after the marketing company or the company that hired them. Okay. You can go after both of them, but you're still not allowed to collect more than whatever the statutory penalty is for the calls that you've received, calls or texts or faxes that you've received. So if you're entitled to $1,500, or let's say there's 2 calls, which is technically what it requires, you're entitled to $3,000. You can't collect $3,000 from the marketing company and $3,000 from that's not fair. You're not allowed to do that. You can get a total of $3,000 and they can split it or.
All right, so we have quite a few people that have just joined, so we're just
Awesome.
we're going to sort of reset. I mean, we'll keep was some new information, but what we're talking about is cashing in on robocalls. You know, those calls that you get at the most inopportune time during the day that seem to come all the time. And matter of fact, the numbers from October are sort of mind-blowing. 5.7 billion robocalls. That's how many Americans got in October, which comes out to 17 per person.
I got about a third of that 5.7 billion.
I mean, right? I'm just wondering, for those of you that are watching this, you're probably thinking, yeah, well, and you're sort of adding it up. I'm pretty sure you got some today, right? So everybody gets these calls, and everybody really wishes that there was a solution for this. The do not call registry doesn't work. The government's talking about it. Telephone companies talking. But again, we're still dealing with this every day. So this other avenue is kind of a way to sort of, I don't know, handle things and to make some money while this is still such a big problem.
And, you know, we've all dealt with the robocalls. I mean, it doesn't matter what we think about politics. If we agree or disagree about politics or religion or any number of controversial things, we all agree we hate the robocalls.
Right, we all agree.
And I can tell you that, you know, like I said earlier, I don't get robocalls very often anymore. And it's because I've taken enough money from enough people that I've just blacklisted. And there is and this is an important thing too. There are companies out there who mine data from all of the different courts all over the country, and they look for people who are filing lawsuits under the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, the TCPA, which is a statute that's in play here.
Right.
Well, they look for people who have filed multiple cases under the TCPA. And when they find them, they publish that list to robocallers. They also sell, with the names of these people, they sell their phone numbers and so on. So there's an additional list that smart, usually legitimate robocallers will compare and say, on top of the do not call registry, and they'll say, oh, I'm gonna check this, you know, common litigants list.
Are you on that list?
I would have to think.
I
would have to think that I'm on that list.
Yeah. Okay, and so, all right, just to kind of recap again, like, how do you do it? What do you do? So it starts by answering the call, right? So don't ignore the call, don't block the call. It's counterintuitive because that's what we want to do.
It's going to be a pain regardless.
Right.
If it's going to be a pain, why not make $1,500?
Right. So we got that. So you answer the call. And after you answer the call, just act interested. I don't care what it is. I know you probably don't need that auto warranty, and you don't need that health insurance, and you don't need whatever it is that they're selling. But just act interested. And however you have to do that, playing dumb card works, just being interested in whatever, however you get there, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to get a bunch of information from them, right? You're trying to get as much information about who's actually calling as you can, because you can't rely on the phone number, because it could be,
someone asked about the spoof numbers.
Yeah, because it can be any number.
Spoofing is when they put in the fake number that shows up in your caller ID, and very often it'll look like your number, like the area code, the prefix, and then the last four numbers are different. They call that neighbor spoofing, and the original intent of that was to kind of make people think, oh, this must be somebody I know, so they answer.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is now people have kind of figured out, and they're like, oh, well, if it's my first, my area code and prefix, I'm never going to answer.
Not answering a lot of calls.
Exactly. So the way they do that, all of this is technology driven, and they can put in whatever number they want to appear in your caller ID.
Right.
And again, we talked earlier about blocking the numbers and why that doesn't work. They change the number that shows up in your caller ID every day. So it's, there's no point in blocking the numbers, really. People think, oh, yeah, it doesn't matter. They're just going to call you tomorrow from a different number.
Yeah. Hi, Whitney. I just wanted to say hi. I love her. She's a friend of mine. And
hi,
Terry's
Whitney.
on here. And Terry is, if you've watched anything, I think there's some social videos on our pages. And also, if you watch any of KHOU lately, you will probably have seen our promo. And Terry is the person who says that she's thanking robocallers because she's taking her family to Disney World. So she obviously has figured out kind of the steps, and she's figured it out well enough that she's just raking it in. She really is.
Yeah.
All right, so once you get all of that vital information, right, the next thing you do is you send a demand letter. Doc has a demand letter, a sample of one in the kit. You just kind of fill in the little areas,
Blanks.
the blanks. Thank you, as I went blank. And then
Irony.
you send it to them, and then you wait.
Usually not too long.
And so it almost sounds like it's a scam. I'm sitting here and I believe it now because I've read enough and I've seen it.
Yeah.
But for people that are watching us now, they're going to say, that doesn't even make sense. Like, who's just cutting checks left and right to people? But you're putting the law in front of them, right? And you're saying, I know you're breaking it. Look, here it is. I know you're breaking it. So you can either pay up to me or go to court. Now, whether or not you want to do all that is your choice, but you're basically saying, you and I both know that I'm in the right here. And then the idea is that they cut you a check. It could be $500. It could be $1,500. And the difference, that's a big difference there, right? And that has to do with whether or not you're registered on the Do Not Call registry, which, as we know, doesn't really work. But it does allow you to get more money if you turn around and, I'm not going to say sue because you're not really.
You don't really have to, usually.
You're not really at that point, you know, but you're sending that initial letter to kind of start that process. So $1,500 for a robocall, it sounds like easy work. I know it's not that easy. For some people, it seems to be easier than others.
It is remarkably easier than most people tend to think, though. And that's the thing, you know, and I think I saw in the promo, you know, people ask me all the time, well, what's the hardest part of this? And I always have to say, convincing people that I'm not some charlatan snake oil salesman. This really does work. You know, and this is not the first news story. It's been around a while. It's kind of made the rounds all over the country. You can Google me. You can Google the kit. You can and see this is legit. This is not. You know, I used to get a lot of questions when it was just me, and I had my beta group. The first people that were a part of this project with me, my actual friends and so on Facebook. Well, when I kind of put it out there to the rest of the world, people are like, well, yeah, it's always you posting checks, though. And I was like, okay. So I said, everybody, redact and post your checks. Well, now it's hard to argue because literally we update the website every couple of days, well, maybe every 2 weeks, I'd say, with new checks. And if you look at the dates on the checks, you'll see that they were from this month, last month. And we do that. You know, there's usually about a week lag time or so on, and then you figure another 2 weeks. So the checks are a month or two old, and we have literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of checks. Now, we don't post them all the time. We just post fresh ones because it's just, you know,
I have
overkill.
I have to imagine though, when you get that first check, like you are so pumped and you're so excited. I don't care how much it is, just the fact that you got a check, right? And so you're so excited about the fact that you stuck it to them, right? It like sort of gives you kind of new life, and you get this whole newfound confidence to continue doing it.
Yeah.
And again, there's work that goes into it. I mean, it's easy money for some people, but again, it does require some work.
Yeah, there are people that, you know, will come to me and say, oh yeah, but gosh, if I spend, you know, 10 minutes on the phone with them and 20 or 30 minutes researching them and then another 20 minutes arguing with them via email to whatever. And I was like, okay, so you're making $1,500 an hour now? Because that's a pretty good hourly, the way I see it, you know, making $1,500 an hour. And that's just on one. You know, there's people that have gotten, you know, 5, 6 calls. There's people posting in the members only group that are in big lawsuits right now. Big lawsuits where they've had 50 calls from the same person. And those numbers.
I don't understand how that happens. Like at some point in time, you feel like your name would be on a list somewhere, and they'd say, just stop calling this number.
Yeah, whatever you do, don't call this Compton guy in Texas.
Right. And by the way, Doc you're from McKinney?
I'm from McKinney, just north of Dallas.
Texas. So he is, I was going to say local, but he's a Texan.
Local-ish.
Local-ish, yep. All right.
Houston is a suburb of Dallas, isn't it? Sorry, did I offend all the Houstonians?
Yeah, you did. People just looked up. Yeah, you did. It's okay. Sorry.
Also, too, just for additional information, just basics and so on, we do have a Facebook page that we've created. It's Turning Robocalls into Cash. If you just search that on Facebook, you'll find it. There's actually the Facebook page, and then there's 2 groups. One group is for people who have not purchased the kit yet. We just try to post some information in there, some helpful information, stuff like that. And then the members only group, which is the one that we're talking about most, that has the actual kit users who are collecting checks regularly.
The kit it's easy to read and easy to follow. I purchased it for the station because when we started doing the story on it, I wanted to know what was up, and it's $47. So what's up with that? $47. It's not $50. It's not $47. How'd you come up with that number?
My sales people and online marketing people will get it.
Not too expensive, not too.
Just it's almost random. You know, and it's one of those things where we get the trolls. The trolls are out there. Hi, trolls. Love you too. You'll come around one day. I'll never forget the first story that actually aired, you know, somewhere else. They posted it on YouTube, and that story's got 150,000 views or something crazy like that. And I made the mistake of reading the comments.
Yeah.
I wanted to hang myself after I read those comments, all the horrible things that people were saying about me and, you know, in this kit and so on and so forth. But what I found is that's the minority. Those are the people that are making the comments. They just don't know. I tend to send those people copies of the checks periodically.
Yeah.
Just say, hey, here's another one of those scam checks you were talking about.
And here's the thing, right? So I separately went on and searched, and you can figure it out on your own. I mean, you don't have to buy this kit. You can figure it out on your own. Yeah. What Doc has done he's kind of pulled it all together in this nice little package, along with the sample letters and all of that, and the law and everything that you need there. So it makes it easy. So the convenience, you're paying for the convenience of it.
Yeah, it's the learning curve.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I've spent countless hours. I'm kind of a nerd. And I spent countless hours compiling the information. I constantly study the case law. My wife, who I'm sure is watching right now, can attest to the fact that I spend way more time on my phone reading case law and messages from attorneys and so on and so forth. Because I enjoy it and I know that it works, and I know that the more information we have, the better the end result is going to be for everybody. So, you know, we take 6 years of hours and hours and hours of work and put it into a 30-page PDF so that anybody can do it. We've got a 16-year-old kid, you know who I'm talking about, who's, when he got the kit, he was 15, lives in South Carolina. He has made about $30,000. He bought his first car,
a BMW.
A BMW with cash that he had collected from robocall settlements. True story. He's a member in the group, and you'll see him in there every day.
Yeah. Okay, so here we go. Jessica. Actually, Jessica's right over there. So she's here in the station. I get calls in another language. How do I handle them when I don't speak their language?
What's the program that teaches you the
Oh, Rosetta Stone?
Rosetta Stone. Get Rosetta Stone. That's the best thing I can tell you. Now, I've heard, you know, the two main languages here in Texas anyway that are coming up are Spanish, of course, and Chinese. There's a lot of Mandarin. As I understand it, it's Mandarin. I speak neither Spanish nor Mandarin, but a lot of those calls are just scams, and they are specifically targeting Spanish-speaking, Chinese-speaking people. Some of them are threatening them with deportation and so on and so forth if they don't pay. Totally fake, totally a scam.
Yeah.
Now there's others that are basically the same kinds of calls that we're getting on other things. They're just calling in Spanish. Now, I can show you, I have recordings of Spanish robocallers and Chinese robocallers. You know, those are the only ones I can't even do anything with.
I'm going to do one more scroll through here, and if you wouldn't mind doing the same. I'm looking for, can you answer that question again? I like the question that Michelle Flores asked about handling the settlement in person. She was under the impression you had to maybe go somewhere like court or something, but you don't have to.
No, absolutely not. You know, typically I ask people to just send a certified check or cashier's check. Sometimes they send money orders. You know, and that's one of the things people ask about all the time is like, really, what kind of legit business sends a $500 or a $1,500 money order? None. Scumbag robocallers who don't want you to know what their banking information is will send you money orders or cashier's checks and so on and so forth. Another question that we get all the time, do they ever send bounce checks? Best of my knowledge, we've never had one. Never had any issues with that, you know, those kinds of things. We have people that, I mean, I've done it where they've just wired money, you know, straight into your bank account. A lot of attorneys do that. If you're dealing with an attorney, I'm way more comfortable with it. You know, as opposed to just dealing with some scumbag robocaller in, you know, South Florida somewhere or Maryland or, you know, where a lot of these calls originate from.
Do we claim this money on our taxes? Terrence.
I'm not a tax professional, so I can't give tax advice. The best thing that I can tell you is that you should consult your tax professional. It can be taxable income, so keep that in mind. Many times, your settlement agreement, the robocalls will ask you to fill out a W-9 so that they can write it off on their taxes. Honestly, though, many of them, the vast majority of them don't. They're starting to, because we are just, in the number of people that we've gotten in this program so far, we're kind of bringing these guys to their knees a little bit because it's repeat offenders. People say, why do they call Texas so much? Texas and California kind of go back and forth, being the most robocalled states in the union.
Right.
And yeah, lucky us. Well, it is for us now, for me anyway.
Yeah.
But the reason they call Texas, particularly with health insurance, is because Texas has one of the lowest rates of health insured individuals. So statistically speaking, the people that are calling from all around the country to try and sell you insurance know that statistically they've got a better chance of getting somebody on the phone who needs health insurance. So that's why we get so many of the calls. Plus we have obviously huge population centers. You've got LA in California, San Francisco, and so on, but here we have Houston, Dallas, and so on, Austin, San Antonio.
All right, so we're going to wrap this up, but I do want to ask you a couple more things, and I feel like it's not wrapping up when I ask a few more things. But what are the other big questions you get from people? Because I feel like there are going to be people that think of something later, or they're going to see this story later, and then they're going to want to know the answer. So what are the big questions that you get?
Honestly, we've covered the bulk of them.
Okay.
The thing is, and again, it sounds pitchy, and I don't mean it to, but the kit is worth the money. Because if I sat here and tried to read to you aloud a 30-page PDF, it wouldn't make sense. You wouldn't get it all, and so on. Oftentimes you read the kit, and then you go back and you reread the kit, and then you go back and you reread the kit, and then that's the first step. The second step really is I tell people to get on Facebook and join the group, because a lot of the, my learning curve was this. I made the kit, which made people's learning curve this, and now there's people in the group constantly contributing additional information. So now the learning curve is like this. So realistically, any question that you come up with, for the most part, someone else has already asked it, and they've done it in the group. And in the Facebook group, you can actually search by, keyword or whatever. If you're looking for a particular company, phone number, industry, whatever, and that, it's all there.
Okay. Doc obviously wants to be able to answer all of your questions, so if you do have any, now is your chance before we say goodbye. Veronica says, I get many calls from Florida or Milwaukee. Does the same apply everywhere? And the answer is yes, because we're talking about federal law.
So it applies to all 50 states.
Yeah. Okay. The story runs tonight at 10 o'clock, and so you'll see Doc again. And if you have more questions, you can drop them down below, and I will bug him to get the answers for you. I feel like he'll probably go on there and search some too and respond to you as well. But thank you.
You know what? The joke is, I'm, man of the people, and this is what I do.
This is going to come up. Yeah.
This is what I do, and I'm passionate about this. Needless to say, it's a great business for me, and I'm not going to lie. It'd be silly to try and deny that.
Yeah.
But more importantly, there are people out there making tons and tons of money doing this, and we're really getting rid of a problem that nobody else has been able to solve. I mean, I don't know if we talked about this or not, but the FCC levied $200 million plus in fines against robocallers between 2015 and 2018. Guess how much they've collected so far? As of 2018, $7,000.
Oh.
We have people in the story who have collected more than that. 16-year-old kids and stay-at-home moms, disabled vets, retirees, lawyers, working professionals, salespeople, you name it. All demographics that are using this and having success with it. The FCC can't do it, and that's not a dig at the FCC. The FTC and the FCC are, equally advocates, but they don't have the resources, nor do they have the time to address every single robocaller. We do. We're the ones getting the calls, and if we can handle them at that moment, we're going to be infinitely more effective than Washington, D.C. is going to be. Which, big plans. What my next steps for this project, there's a couple of things, and I don't want to give too much away, but
why not?
I intend to go to Washington, D.C. and talk to some people, some important people, the FTC, and the FCC and several elected officials, and we're going to talk about some of the changes that they need to make to the existing statutes. I'm one of those guys. We don't need a whole bunch more laws. We just need to be more effective in enforcing the laws that are on the books, maybe tweak the laws that are on the books a little bit, and increase the amount that you and I can collect for these robocalls.
That's
So
nice.
that now, if you get 2 calls, instead of getting 3,000, you could get 10,000. Well, how much quicker are we going to get rid of the robocallers and force them to change the way they're doing their marketing if we're hitting them for 10 grand at a time as opposed to 3 or 4 or 5?
You're asking for information about the kit. It's actually in the link that is in the body of the story, and also in that link you'll find the site that takes you to the Do Not Call registry, so you can check and see if your number is on there, and if it isn't, you can also register for it through that site as well, because that is the difference between maybe getting $500 from a robocaller and $1,500. It is worth your time to put your phone number on the Do Not Call registry.
Takes literally 3 or 4 minutes tops.
Yeah, yeah. So that's where all the information is. Again, any more questions, we will talk about them later and we'll comment on those later. But Doc, thank you so much for coming in, and we appreciate you. I think we've been on for about a whole hour now.
We have.
Congratulations.
Brilliant. Hey,
Thanks.
we did it.
Yeah, we did.